My dad died on a Tuesday. Not in some dramatic way, he just didn't wake up. My mom found him on the sofa with the TV still on. I took a week off work. My wife told me I should get out of the house. She said it gently, the way you say things to someone you're worried about. So I drove 4 hours to the Nantahala National Forest. My dad used to take me there as a kid. He used to say it was the only place that made him feel small. I hadn't been back in 20 years. I didn't even know if the overlook we went to was still accessible, but I packed a bag and went anyway. Not because I thought it would help, I just didn't know what else to do. I got to the trail around 2 p.m., later than I wanted because I'd slept badly the night before. The main trail was well marked for about a mile and a half. After that, I had to go off trail to find the overlook. I remembered a creek crossing and then a steep section with exposed roots. The rest I was just going by feel. My phone had 1 bar of service, then none. The trees were thick enough that the sky looked gray even though it wasn't cloudy. I crossed the creek. The water was lower than I expected. I started moving up the slope, looking for the root section, but nothing looked right. Everything was overgrown. I guess 20 years will do that. I kept going anyway because turning back would have meant the whole trip was pointless, and I wasn't ready for that to be true. That's when I saw him. He was sitting on a fallen log next to the creek, maybe 30 yards upstream from where I'd crossed. He was an older man, 60, maybe 65. He was wearing a flannel shirt and canvas pants. He had a walking stick across his knees. He wasn't hiking, he wasn't resting. He was just sitting there, facing the direction I'd come from. He smiled when he saw me, not a polite smile, a warm one, the kind that reaches the eyes. He asked where I was headed. I told him about the overlook and the rock shelf. I described it poorly and I wasn't even sure if I was going the right way. He nodded before I finished. "Oh, I know exactly where that is. I can show you." He stood up and started walking before I said yes. I followed him, but I don't really know why. Maybe because he reminded me of my dad. Not in any specific way. Not his face, not his voice. It was just the way he moved through the woods. Confident and unhurried, like the trees were furniture in his living room. My dad walked like that. And saying no thanks to this man who was offering help just felt ungrateful. He talked while we walked. He asked me why I was out here alone. I told him that my dad used to bring me here. I didn't say he was dead. The man nodded and said, "Fathers and sons need places like this." Something about the way he said that made me feel uneasy. We walked for about 20 minutes. The trail, if you can call it that, got thinner. Branches closed in. The light was dropping faster than it should have been. It was maybe 3:30 in the afternoon, but it felt like dusk under the canopy. He never checked his direction. He never paused. He never looked back to see if I was keeping up. He just walked. Then he stopped. We were in a clearing I didn't recognize. There was no rock shelf, no valley view, just a flat circle of dirt surrounded by hemlocks. The ground was hard packed, like it'd been walked on. A lot. "This isn't the overlook," I said. He didn't turn around. He was standing at the far edge of the clearing, facing away from me. He was completely still. "No," he said, "but you'll want to stay." I felt the air change. Not the temperature, the pressure, like the woods were leaning in. I looked down at the dirt and noticed marks. Dozens of footprints, all different sizes, all leading into the clearing. None leading out. The man turned around, slowly, and he was still smiling, but all the warmth was gone from it. It was just the shape of a smile on a face that didn't need one. "You should sit down," he said. I ran. I don't remember making the decision. My legs just went. I crashed through branches, tripped over roots, cut my hands on something I never saw. I didn't follow a trail because there wasn't one. I just went downhill. Downhill meant getting to the creek, and the creek meant the main trail, and the main trail meant my car. It took about an hour and a half to find the trailhead. It was fully dark by then. My phone found signal in the parking lot at 8:47 p.m. I'd been in the woods for nearly 7 hours. I drove home that night. I told my wife the trail was overgrown and I couldn't find the overlook. She said she was sorry and we went to bed. I never went back, and I never told anyone about what happened. My girlfriend booked the cabin for our anniversary. 3 nights, off-grid, no Wi-Fi, no cell service. The listing said it was a digital detox retreat. There was a wood stove and a porch, and nothing else for miles. She was excited about it. She'd been planning it for weeks. We weren't doing well. I need to say this up front because it's the reason everything happened the way it did. We'd been arguing for months. No screaming, the quiet kind. The kind where every sentence has a second sentence underneath it. She planned this trip because she thought the setting would fix us. I came because saying no would have started another fight. We drove up on a Friday. The listing said the cabin was a short drive off the main road. That was generous. The road narrowed twice, the tree line closed in, and by the time we pulled up to the cabin, it felt like arriving somewhere that didn't want to be found. The cabin itself was fine, but small things were off. The kind of things you notice and then talk yourself out of. There was still food in the fridge. A half carton of milk, not expired, a Tupperware container with leftover rice, a stick of butter with a knife mark in it. I opened the closet in the bedroom. There were clothes inside. Men's clothes. A flannel shirt, a pair of jeans, and a heavy canvas jacket. They smelled like wood smoke and sweat. There were boots by the back door. The soles were caked with fresh mud. This was weird because the listing said the owner lived out of state. I pointed out the boots. My girlfriend said it was probably the cleaning crew. I didn't push it. The last time I pushed back on her plans, we didn't speak for 2 days. So I just said okay and started a fire in the wood stove. We ate dinner on the porch. It was quiet, the real kind, not the angry kind. For about an hour, the trip felt like it was working. Then someone knocked on the door. It was an older woman in her 60s. She said she lived down the hill and saw the lights on. She brought us a jar of homemade jam. She held it out with both hands, like an offering. She was warm and friendly. But she asked a really strange question almost immediately. Is it just the two of you? She asked how long we were staying. My girlfriend said 3 nights. Then she mentioned the property owner by name, called him James. The Airbnb listing said the owner's name was Mike. She lingered at the door. She wasn't looking at us. She was looking past us, into the cabin, her eyes moving from the kitchen to the bedroom door to the hallway, scanning intensely, like she was checking if everything was where it should be. After she left, my girlfriend said, "That was sweet." I couldn't sleep that night. I lay there maybe 40 minutes just listening, telling myself the sounds I was hearing was the wind through the foundation gaps. I got up and walked to the kitchen. The boots by the back door were gone. I stood there looking at the empty space where they'd been. The mud marks were still on the floor. I went back to bed. I didn't wake her up. I didn't have a good reason for that. I think I was afraid if I said something she'd tell me I was ruining the trip. Or worse, she'd believe me, and then we'd both have to deal with it. In the morning, the boots were back. In the same spot, with the same wet mud. My girlfriend was making coffee like nothing was wrong. The sun was coming through the kitchen window and the whole cabin smelled like pine and wood smoke. For a moment, I thought maybe I dreamt it. Then I noticed the jam in the jar the woman brought. It was still on the counter where we left it, but the seal was broken. Someone had opened it. There was a spoon inside the jar. A spoon that wasn't ours. I told my girlfriend we should leave. She looked at me the way I knew she would, disappointed and hurt. "We just got here," she said. "Can you please just try?" That night I stayed awake. I sat in the kitchen chair with the lights off, watching the back door. At 2:14 a.m., the handle turned. Slowly. It was locked. The handle went back to neutral. For the entire night, I just stayed there, looking at the door, wondering when it would happen again. We left the next morning. I told her I was sick. I made up food poisoning, told her probably the grocery store deli from the drive up. She got really angry, and she didn't talk to me for the first hour of the drive home. We broke up 3 weeks later. Unrelated, maybe not. I really don't know. I reported the listing on Airbnb. I said the cabin wasn't as described. They sent me a form response and a $50 credit. I checked the listing a month later. It was gone, not taken down. The URL just led to a page that said, "This listing is no longer available." I still think about the boots, how they were gone at night and back in the morning. How the mud was always fresh, like someone was using them, coming and going through a door I never found. I think about the woman, the way she counted us, the way her eyes mapped the cabin, like she was making sure there was room. I've been a nurse for 16 years. I was driving home from a 12-hour shift at a hospital 2 counties over at 3:20 a.m. My husband always told me to take the highway at night. It added 20 minutes, but it was well lit and well traveled. I never listened. I'd driven Route 33 100 times. It was my road. I knew every curve, every grade, every spot where deer liked to stand in the shoulder. That night, I was the kind of tired where your eyes do things on their own. They unfocus. They track movement that isn't there. I had a bad shift and I just wanted to be home. I missed my turn. Not dramatically, I just zoned out through the intersection where I usually bear left toward the valley. By the time I realized it, I was on a stretch of road I didn't recognize. My GPS was recalculating. It found a route, said it was only 5 minutes longer, so I kept going. The road narrowed. The center line disappeared. The trees pressed in closer. My headlights were the only light in any direction. Then I passed a church. The kind of church you see in every small Appalachian town. Plain, functional, built by the congregation in the 1940s and maintained with whatever was available. But it was lit. Every window was glowing warm yellow, and there were cars in the parking lot. 8, maybe 9 vehicles, at 3:45 in the morning. I slowed down as I passed. The front door was closed. I couldn't see anyone through the windows, just the light. It was steady, not flickering, like every bulb in the building was on. I told myself it was a prayer group. Some churches do that, I think. Night services for shift workers, maybe. I'd never been religious, but I knew enough to know that people gathered at strange hours for all kinds of reasons. I kept driving, but I was feeling unsettled now, and my fuel light had come on 6 miles ago. 5 miles past the church, I found a gas station. It was the kind of place that shouldn't have been open. One pump island, a cinder block building with a flat roof, a single fluorescent tube buzzing above the door. I pulled up and went inside. A man stood behind the counter and barely looked at me. I paid for the gas in cash and asked him for directions back to Route 33. He gave them, but the route he described took me back past the church. "Is there another way?" I asked. He looked at me for the first time. He really looked. His eyes were tired, but there was something behind the tiredness. Something careful. "That's the only road." I asked about the church, wondering why it was lit up at this hour. Who was meeting there in the middle of the night? He didn't answer the questions. He looked at the counter, then back at me. "You should get home." That was it. 3 words. Not unkind, not threatening, but not casual either. I got back on the road and headed toward the church. I saw it from a quarter mile away. Or rather, I saw the absence of it. The glow was gone. When I rounded the last curve, the church was dark. Every single window was black, and the parking lot was empty. All of this happened in 15 minutes since I passed it. I slowed to a crawl, my headlights sweeping across the front of the building. The front door was now open, not all the way, maybe just a foot, just enough to see the darkness inside. Then I saw someone, at the tree line, just to the right of the building. There was a figure standing still. They weren't facing the road. They weren't even looking at the church. They were looking at the woods, just standing at the edge where the gravel met the trees, arms at their sides. I couldn't even tell if it was a man or a woman. I didn't stop. My foot found the gas and I went 50 miles an hour on a road that wasn't built for it. The church disappeared behind me. The trees closed back in. I drove like that for 10 minutes until the road widened and I saw a sign I recognized. I made it home at 4:40 a.m. My husband was fast asleep. I locked the door, then the back door, and checked every window in the house. I stood in the shower for 20 minutes without turning the water on, just standing there and shaking. I take the highway now every single time. My husband asked me why I switched, and I told him I was just being safer. I haven't driven that route ever since that night. But sometimes, on the highway, when I'm coming through the gap in the mountains right before my exit, I look south toward where that road would be.